The invention of basketball in 1891 by James Naismith caused a turning point in sports culture in the United States and around the world because it was a game that people could play indoors during the winter months that was challenging and kept them interested. Dr. James Naismith created the sport of basketball in December 1891 at the YMCA International Training College in Springfield, Massachusetts. At the YMCA, he was given 14 days to create an indoor sport that would keep the interest of the students during the winter because all of the other indoor winter sports at that time were mainly boring or dangerous. So James came up with a new game, basketball, which required both skill and strength. James Naismith received his medical doctorate degree from the University of Colorado in 1898. From that time up until 1937, he was the chairman of the physical education department at Kansas University, where he coached basketball up until 1908. He was also the chaplain. During James's time at Kansas University, he took two very long breaks. One was in 1917 when he volunteered to fight in France as the military chaplain in World War I. He was in France until the war ended in 1919. James Naismith invented basketball at the YMCA International Training College in Springfield, Massachusetts. While at the YMCA, James was given 14 days to come up with an indoor sport that would interest the students during the winter months. Because, like he said, in 1890, when I first entered this institution, there were practically no games with the exception of football, baseball, and track. Football in the fall, baseball and track in the spring. Soccer we played very little. From the time we stopped playing football in the fall until baseball began in the spring, we had nothing. Naismith then met with Dr. Searle, Clark, Gulick, and Stagg, and they tried to come up with a game that was interesting and that could be played indoors. They came up with 3 different games: 3 deep, line ball, and cricket. They met frequently in a seminar, and one day Dr. Gulick said, "There's nothing new under the sun, but all new things are simply a recombination of factors of existing things." Then, one day, at a faculty meeting, Dr. Clark spoke about a class of men who were all mostly on the football team. But once the winter came and the season was over, they had to work on the parallel bars, which they disliked. Clark said, "The difficulty is, with that particular group of men, what we want is recreative work, something that will please them and something that they will want to do." Then Dr. Gulick told James, "Naismith, I wish you would take charge of that class." James said that if he ever tried to back out of anything, this was it, because he already had a class interested in swimming, wrestling, boxing, and fencing, and that he was perfectly satisfied with his work. But then Dr. Gulick said, "This would be a good time for you to invent that new game you said you could," and that he could do 2 things. Number 1, that he needed to make up a new game. Number 2, that the game must interest the group. James decided to take the challenge, and when he went to the class, they tried to play football, but they broke some arms and legs. So then they tried soccer, but they broke some of the windows. Then they tried lacrosse, but they broke up the apparatus. James then realized that he needed something new, because everything else wouldn't work indoors. Then, James broke down why they couldn't play football indoors at his desk and thought, "They all like to play football. Why can't we play it indoors? Because it is too rough. Why is it rough? Because we tackle. Why do we tackle? Because we run with the ball. If we did not run with the ball, there would be no necessity for tackling. They needed a game to play indoors." James had an idea, just by asking himself those few questions. James then thought about how if they can't run with the ball, they'd have to throw it. But in lacrosse and soccer, you throw or kick it as hard as you can, but that can cause roughness. So instead of throwing the ball straight for the goal, they needed to throw it in a curve and not as hard. Then James said, "I thought of putting a mark on the floor, just a circle, and use that as a goal. But the goalkeeper would stand in it, and we could not make the goal. Put it above his head, no one can stand in it, and you'd have a chance of making the goal once in a while. It'd be horizontal and high in the air." James then had to come up with a way to put the ball into play. He thought about how Dr. Gulick said to use ideas from other games, so he thought how in polo and English rugby, the ball was put into play, but they were too rough. Then he thought that if you take one player out of each group and put them in the center, that would eliminate roughness. So he thought about throwing the ball in from the side, but then that must be thrown in some way to get it to fall in the middle of the 2 players. James then sat down and wrote down some of his thoughts about the game. He came up with 13 rules. Rule number 1. The ball may be thrown in any direction with one or both hands. Number 2. The ball may be batted in any direction with one or both hands, but never with the fist. Number 3. A player may not run with the ball. The player must throw it from the spot on which he catches it. Allowance to be made for a man who catches the ball when running at a good speed. Number 4. The ball must be held in or between the hands. The arms or body must not be used for holding it. Number 5. No shouldering, holding, pushing, tripping, or striking in any way the person of an opponent shall be allowed. The first infringement of this rule by any person shall count as a foul. The second shall disqualify him till the next goal is made, or if there was evident intent to injure the person for the whole game. No substitute allowed. Number 6. A foul is striking the ball with the fist. violation of Rules 3 and 4, and such described in Rule 5. Number 7. If either side makes 3 consecutive fouls, it shall count as a goal for the opponents. Consecutive means without the opponents in the meantime making a foul. Number 8. A goal shall be made when the ball is thrown or batted from the grounds into the basket and stays there, providing those defending the goal do not touch or disturb the goal. If the ball rests on the edge and the opponent moves the basket, it shall count as a goal. Number 9. When the ball goes out of bounds, it shall be thrown into the field and played by the person first touching it. In case of a dispute, the umpire shall throw it straight into the field. The thrower in is allowed 5 seconds. If he holds it longer, it shall go to the opponent. If any side persists in delaying the game, the umpire shall call a foul on them. Number 10. The umpire shall be the judge of the men, and shall note fouls, and notify the referee when 3 consecutive fouls have been made. He shall have the power to disqualify men according to Rule 5. Number 11. The referee shall be the judge of the ball, and shall decide when the ball is in play, in bounds, and to which side it belongs, and he shall keep the time. He shall decide when a goal has been made, and keep account of the goals with any other duties that are usually performed by a referee. Number 12. The time shall be 2 15-minute halves with 5 minutes rest between. Number 13. The side making the most goals in that time shall be declared the winners. In a case of a draw, the game may, by agreement of the captains, be continued until another goal is made. James then went and pinned the rules on a bulletin board. Now James needed to find goals to post up in the gym, so he went down and asked Pop Stebbins, the janitor, if he had 2 boxes 18 inches square. Then the janitor said, "No, but I have a couple of old peach baskets." Then he brought them up, and James nailed them at the 2 ends of the gallery, which was 10 feet off the ground. James said, if the gallery had been 11 feet high, the goals would have probably been at that height today. Then the class came down, not looking very excited over a new game. Frank Mahan was the first student to the gym. When he saw the baskets on the wall, he sighed and said, "Another new game?" Then, when everyone was finally there, James decided the 18 men in the class up into 2 groups. Mahan was the center on one side and Patton on the other. James threw the ball up between the 2 men to start the game, and he didn't have much more trouble with that class, or with the game. The class loved it, and the only other trouble that James had was getting that class to leave when the hour was over. Soon after, many other students started coming down after the hour was over and watching them play from the gallery. Then women started playing basketball too. It was a big change to most of the women because a lot of them have never played or been in a sport where sportsmanship had been required. So sportsmanship was new to them. James was asked to be the umpire of their game by some of the women. He agreed to it, but when he called a foul on one of the ladies, she got mad and asked, "Did you just call a foul on me?" and started telling James where he came from, where he was going to, and what his character was. About 40 years after this, James said that this is not true today. Some of the finest sportsmanship has been exhibited in women's basketball game. 10 years after James Naismith created the sport of basketball, colleges started playing basketball too. However, only a few colleges participated. They usually only played 10 games in a season, but sometimes teams would get lucky and play 15 or 16. In 1901, Yale went 10-4 to win the first national college championship. In these early college games, there were never a good game with all good referees. In the time around 1905 to 1910, many American activist groups started asking the government to step in and place restrictions on the sport. So in 1910, President Theodore Roosevelt urged the colleges to form a governing body for themselves before it was too late. In the summer of 1910, they did and formed the Intercollegiate Athletic Association. On November 7, 1896, the first professional basketball game took place when the Brooklyn YMCA traveled to Trenton, New Jersey to play the Trenton YMCA. The game was held at the Trenton Masonic Temple. Trenton defeated Brooklyn 15-1 to win the first professional basketball game. In 1936, the first year that basketball was featured in the Olympic Games, James Naismith got the privilege of greeting and speaking to 21 basketball teams at the Olympics in Berlin, Germany. In the mid-1930s, a professional basketball league was formed. It was known as the NBL, or the National Basketball League. Then, in 1946, another league was formed that was known as the Basketball Association of America, or the BAA. Before the 1948-49 season, 4 of the NBL teams crossed over to the BAA, only to be followed by the other 6 teams the following season to form a new league, the NBA. In 1967, the ABA, or American Basketball Association, was formed and encouraged many NBA players to switch leagues, often with big contracts. The ABA disbanded in 1976, with many of its teams joining the NBA. Ever since James Naismith invented the sport of basketball in 1891 at Springfield College, basketball has been a hit, everywhere from backyards to the Olympic Games.